Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we share heartfelt tales of kindness, transformation, and the incredible power of compassion. Today's story is about a billionaire whose life takes an unexpected turn when three boys show him the true meaning of selflessness, sparking a journey that changes an entire community. The rain poured relentlessly, drumming against the roof of James Montgomery's sleek black Mercedes. The storm had turned the rural Georgia road into a desolate and treacherous stretch of asphalt, flanked by sodden fields and distant hills shrouded in mist. James, a self-made billionaire known for his precision and punctuality, was gripping the steering wheel tightly as the windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the downpour. The clock on the dashboard ticked closer to his deadline. He had just 45 minutes to reach Atlanta for a critical business meeting. It wasn't just any meeting, it was the culmination of months of work on a billion-dollar merger. A deal that would further cement his name in the business elite. Suddenly, a loud thud reverberated through the car, followed by a sickening lurch to the side. James instinctively pulled over to the shoulder, muttering a sharp "damn it" as he glanced out the window. The rear tire on the driver's side was completely flat. Stepping out into the rain, he surveyed the damage, his tailored navy suit quickly soaking through. The cold water seeped into his expensive leather shoes as he opened the trunk to reveal a spare tire he had no idea how to install. James wasn't used to feeling helpless. He had built his empire on control and decisiveness. But standing there in the rain, on an empty stretch of road with no cell signal, he felt stranded, both literally and figuratively. He cursed under his breath again, scanning the horizon for signs of life. But there was nothing but fields, sky, and the relentless storm. As he leaned against the car, contemplating his options, faint laughter cut through the sound of rain. He turned, squinting into the distance, and spotted three figures on bicycles pedaling toward him. They were teenagers, likely no older than 15. Their mismatched raincoats splattered with mud. Their laughter and chatter seemed out of place in the dreary weather, a stark contrast to James's frustration. "Hey, mister! Need some help?" called the tallest of the boys, his voice carrying over the storm. His curly hair peeked out from under the hood of his worn blue raincoat, and his confident grin was enough to momentarily disarm James's skepticism. James hesitated. He was used to relying on professionals, not a group of teenagers on bicycles. But with no other options, he finally gestured toward the shredded tire. "Ah, yeah. Got a flat," he admitted. "But I'm not sure how much help." "Don't worry," the boy interrupted, crouching by the tire. "We've got this." He introduced himself as Marcus, and his two friends, Jamal and Tyler, quickly joined him. They moved with an ease and coordination that surprised James. Jamal fetched the jack and wrench from the trunk, while Tyler steadied the car as Marcus got to work loosening the lug nuts. "You don't mind getting wet?" James asked, watching them in disbelief. "It's just rain," Tyler replied with a shrug. "We're already soaked anyway." Despite the weather, the boys worked with a rhythm and camaraderie that seemed almost rehearsed. They chatted and laughed, treating the task like an adventure rather than an inconvenience. James found himself marveling at their determination and teamwork. In less than 20 minutes, the spare tire was securely in place. "All done," Marcus announced, wiping his muddy hands on his raincoat. His grin was wide, his pride evident. James stared at the boys, then at the car, almost unable to believe what he had just witnessed. "You really pulled it off," he said, his tone a mix of gratitude and astonishment. Reaching into his wallet, he pulled out a wad of cash. "Here. Take this, you've earned it." But Marcus shook his head firmly. "No need, mister. We were just passing by and thought you could use a hand.
Yeah,
Jamal added.
besides,
You've got somewhere important to be. The boys hopped back on their bikes, their laughter echoing through the rain as they pedaled away. James stood there, watching them disappear into the storm. For the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't quite name, a sense of humility, perhaps, or a reminder of the power of simple human kindness. Climbing back into his car, he glanced at the clock. There was still time to make it to his meeting. But as he drove off, his thoughts weren't on the merger. Instead, they lingered on the boys who had stopped to help a stranger without expecting anything in return. As James Montgomery drove through the rain-slicked roads toward Atlanta, the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers seemed to echo his thoughts. The storm outside had begun to ease. But within him, a different storm was brewing. The image of the three boys, Marcus, Jamal, and Tyler, refused to fade from his mind. Their laughter, their easy camaraderie, and their refusal to take the money he offered struck a chord he didn't know existed within him. James was a man who had built his life on transactions. Everything had a price, and generosity often came with expectations. Yet, these boys had upended that belief in a matter of minutes. Arriving at the gleaming skyscraper where his meeting was set to take place, James pulled into the valet drop-off area. A young attendant rushed over, umbrella in hand, to shield him from the lingering drizzle. James stepped out, still damp from his roadside ordeal, and offered a polite nod. The valet hesitated, his eyes catching the muddy stains on James's tailored suit and shoes. But James brushed it off with a distracted wave. He wasn't in the mood to explain. The conference room buzzed with activity when James entered. His team was already there, flipping through meticulously prepared documents and exchanging last-minute whispers. At the far end of the room, the clients, a group of seasoned investors, waited with stoic expressions. James adjusted his tie and took his seat at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence taking over. He began presenting his vision for the billion-dollar merger. His words precise, his tone measured. But something was off. As he spoke, James felt his focus waver. The memory of the boys kept intruding, their muddy raincoats and genuine smiles overshadowing the polished suits and sterile atmosphere of the boardroom. He faltered once, then twice, drawing surprised glances from his team. James was known for his sharpness, his ability to command a room with ease. Today, though, he felt strangely disconnected, as if the deal he'd been working on for months suddenly lacked the significance it once held. When the meeting finally concluded, the deal was sealed. The client shook his hand, congratulating him on the successful negotiation. But James barely registered their words. He returned to his office, loosened his tie, and sank into the leather chair by the window. The city skyline stretched before him, the rain now reduced to a faint mist. Normally, the view filled him with pride, a reminder of everything he had achieved. But today, it felt hollow. James leaned back, his thoughts drifting to the moment he reached for his wallet to offer the boys money. He had expected them to take it, most people would have. Yet, they hadn't. Their refusal had left him unsteady, challenging the very foundation of his worldview. In his world, kindness often came with strings attached, a calculated effort to gain something in return. But those boys had helped him simply because they could. It was a selflessness he hadn't encountered in years, and it left him questioning what he had lost in his pursuit of wealth and power. That evening, James found himself unable to shake the feeling that he owed them more than just a thank you. Their act of kindness had sparked something in him, a longing to reconnect with the values he had once held but had long since buried under the weight of his success. He replayed the scene in his mind, Marcus's confident grin, Jamal's steady hands, Tyler's shrug as if to say, "It's just the right thing to do." The storm had cleared by the time James left the office, the streets glistening under the glow of streetlights. As he drove home, he made a decision. He would go back to that small town, not out of obligation, but because he needed to do more. Those boys had reminded him of something he had forgotten, the power of simple human connection. He didn't know what form his gesture would take, but for the first time in years, James felt a spark of purpose that went beyond boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. The next morning, James rose earlier than usual, his resolve firm. He dressed in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, a stark contrast to his usual business attire, and set out for the small town where the boys had helped him. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting a golden light on the rolling fields that lined the highway. With each mile, his thoughts became clearer. This wasn't about repayment or charity. It was about honoring their selflessness and finding a way to make a meaningful difference. By the time he reached the town, the memory of their laughter and camaraderie had solidified into a driving force. James wasn't just going to thank them, he was going to ensure that their act of kindness rippled outward, touching lives far beyond his own. James arrived in the small town just as the sun began to warm the earth, casting long, golden shadows across the streets. The air carried a sense of quiet purpose, a far cry from the constant buzz of the city. He parked his car near the modest diner where he had first seen the boys gathered and glanced across the street. As if drawn by instinct, he spotted Marcus, Jamal, and Tyler outside the worn-down community center. They were hard at work, their laughter mingling with the rustling of trees and the faint sounds of life in the town. The community center itself was a reflection of time and neglect. The paint was peeling, the roof sagged in places, and the playground in the back was little more than a patch of dirt with rusting equipment. Yet, despite its wear, there was something undeniably alive about the place. Children darted in and out of the building, their laughter filling the air, while older residents lingered on the steps, chatting in the morning light. James crossed the street and approached the boys. They noticed him immediately, their faces lighting up with surprise and curiosity. "Mr. Montgomery!" Marcus exclaimed, setting down a bucket of paint he had been holding. "What are you doing here?" James smiled warmly, his hands in his pockets. "I told you I wanted to thank you properly, didn't I? And I figured this might be the place to start." Jamal gestured toward the community center with a mix of pride and resignation. "We're trying to fix it up. It's not much, but it's where a lot of us hang out after school. The roof leaks, and the equipment's old, but we make it work." James studied the building, his gaze lingering on the cracks and worn edges. "It's more than just a building," he said thoughtfully. "It's a space for connection, for growth. It deserves more than just a patch-up job." Tyler, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "What are you saying, Mr. Montgomery?" James crouched down slightly to meet their curious eyes. "I'm saying I want to help. Not just with paint or tools, but with a full renovation. New roof, updated playground, proper equipment, everything this place needs to thrive." The boys exchanged stunned glances. Marcus finally broke the silence. "Are you serious?" James nodded. "Completely. But I'm going to need your help. This is your community, and I want to make sure whatever we do reflects what you all truly need." The boys' faces lit up with excitement, their initial skepticism giving way to enthusiasm. They quickly led James inside the building. where he met Karen, the community center's director. Karen was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and an air of resilience that had clearly been forged through years of advocacy for her town. She greeted James with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief as he explained his plan. "I've already made some calls," James said. "Construction crews, equipment suppliers, even a few local businesses. They're all on board to help. But I need you and the boys to guide this process. Tell me what the center needs most, and we'll make it happen." Karen's eyes welled with tears, and her voice trembled. "This center means everything to this town. I can't thank you enough, Mr. Montgomery." "Call me James," he replied with a smile. "And don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work to do." Over the next few weeks, the transformation began. Construction crews descended upon the center, repairing the roof, replacing old wiring, and giving the building a fresh coat of paint. The playground became a vibrant oasis, with colorful swings, slides, and climbing structures that gleamed in the sunlight. Inside, new furniture, computers, and art supplies replaced the worn-out equipment, creating spaces for learning, creativity, and play. Throughout it all, Marcus, Jamal, and Tyler were ever present. They helped clear debris, painted walls, and even pitched in ideas for the new design. Their excitement was infectious, spreading to the rest of the community. Parents volunteered their time. Local businesses donated materials, and even the most skeptical residents began to rally around the project. One Saturday morning, as the final touches were being added to the playground, a crowd gathered outside the center for the grand reveal. Families, friends, and neighbors filled the space, their faces alight with anticipation. James stood on the steps of the newly renovated building, flanked by Karen and the boys, who were practically vibrating with excitement. When the ribbon was cut, a cheer erupted, and children surged forward to test out the new equipment. Their laughter rang out like music, mingling with the sound of applause and joyful chatter. Karen turned to James, her voice thick with emotion. "You've given us more than a building, James," she said. "You've given us hope." James looked out at the bustling scene before him, his heart swelling with a sense of fulfillment he hadn't felt in years. "It wasn't just me," he said, glancing at the boys. "They reminded me what truly matters." As the sun set that evening, casting a golden glow over the transformed center, James watched the boys swing and climb alongside the other children. Their joy was a testament to the power of kindness and community. For the first time in years, James felt that he had made a difference, not just in his own life, but in the lives of others. And as he drove away from the town that night, he carried with him a renewed sense of purpose and a belief in the ripple effects of even the smallest acts of kindness. Thank you for joining us on Empathy Stories. We hope this story reminded you of the extraordinary impact of small acts of kindness. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help spread these inspiring messages. Let us know in the comments what part of this story moved you most. And stay tuned for more tales that touch the heart and uplift the soul. Together, let's create a world where empathy shines bright.